The bathroom lock had been sticking for 3 weeks. I'd been meaning to fix it, but between managing the gym and pretending my marriage wasn't circling the drain, home repairs kept sliding down the priority list. At 2 in the morning, armed with a screwdriver and a flashlight, I finally tackled the stubborn mechanism. That's when I saw Dalia's phone. She'd left it on the marble countertop, screen down, still glowing through the case. My wife never left her phone anywhere. The woman slept with it under her pillow like some digital security blanket. But there it was, abandoned and unlocked, practically begging for attention. I should have walked away, should have fixed the lock and gone back to bed, should have maintained the illusion that my marriage was just going through a rough patch instead of free-falling into a crater. Instead, I picked up the phone. The message thread was already open. A name I recognized but hadn't thought about in years. Zane Merrinor, Dalia's college boyfriend. The one she'd claimed was ancient history when we'd run into him at a restaurant 6 months ago. The most recent message, sent 3 hours earlier. I miss what we had. My hands didn't shake. After 12 years investigating corporate fraud, I'd developed steady nerves for ugly discoveries. But my stomach did something unpleasant as I scrolled up through months of messages. Can't stop thinking about last Tuesday. He's in Portland until Thursday. My place? You make me feel alive again. And photos, lots of photos. None of them suitable for a married woman to be sending anyone except her husband. The timestamps told the real story. Every message corresponded perfectly with my business trips. While I was in Seattle closing the Henderson investigation, Dalia was entertaining Zane. While I was in Denver tracking down embezzled pension funds, my wife was rediscovering her college romance. I scrolled back further. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies, excuses, and elaborate cover stories about girls' nights and work dinners. 8 months of me believing her when she said she was just stressed about her promotion at the marketing firm. The most recent exchange made my jaw clench. Zane. When are you going to tell him? Dalia. Soon. I need to figure out the logistics first. Zane. I'm tired of hiding. I want to take you to dinner without looking over my shoulder. Dalia. I know, just give me a little more time. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every timestamp. Then, I forwarded them all to a burner email account I'd set up years ago for sensitive investigations. Old habits from the fraud business. Always have a backup. Always preserve the evidence chain. After deleting any trace of my access from the phone's history, I placed it exactly where I'd found it. Screen down, still glowing, still warm from Dalia's touch. The lock repair took another 20 minutes. My hands worked automatically while my mind processed what I'd learned. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a midlife crisis. This was a calculated exit strategy. Dalia wasn't just cheating, she was planning her escape route. I'd spent over a decade catching people who thought they were smarter than the system. Corporate executives who believed their schemes were foolproof. Accountants who assumed their creative bookkeeping would never surface. Investment managers who were certain their shell companies were untraceable. They all had one thing in common. They underestimated the guy doing the investigating. Dalia was about to learn the same lesson. Back in our bedroom, my wife lay on her side, breathing the deep, steady rhythm of genuine sleep. Or maybe she was faking it. After tonight's discovery, I couldn't trust any of my assumptions about her. I slipped under the covers and stared at the ceiling. The digital clock cast green numbers on the wall. 2:47 a.m. In a few hours, Dalia would wake up, shower, dress in one of her carefully selected outfits, and head to her office. She'd kiss my cheek at the door and tell me to have a good day. She'd text me around lunch with some mundane update about her meetings or her co-workers, and all the while, she'd be counting down the hours until she could see Zane again. But I wouldn't be sitting around waiting for her to work up the courage to ask for a divorce. I'd spent my career staying 3 steps ahead of people who thought they were playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Time to remind my wife that she wasn't the only one who knew how to plan ahead. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. Dalia emerged from the bathroom at exactly 6:30, already dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in the kind of effortless waves that took 45 minutes to achieve. "Coffee's ready," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Thanks." I watched her pour 2 cups, adding cream to mine the way she had for 15 years, such a small, intimate gesture. It would have been touching if I hadn't known she was probably thinking about Zane while she did it. "I'll be late tonight," she continued, checking her phone. "Client dinner, that new restaurant downtown." "Which client?" The question came out casually, but I was already cross-referencing her story with the message timestamps from last night. "Morrison Industries, big campaign launch." She rattled off the details with practiced ease. If I hadn't seen the evidence, I would have believed every word. Sounds important. Could be huge for the firm. She kissed my cheek, the same spot she'd been kissing for 15 years, and headed for the garage. "Don't wait up." I waited until her car disappeared down the street before making my first call. "Trevin Investigations. This is Chloe." Chloe Martinez had been my attorney since I'd opened the boxing gym 5 years ago. Before that, she'd handled the legal side of several fraud cases I'd worked. She was sharp, unflappable, and had a talent for anticipating problems before they became disasters. "I need to see you today," I said. "Divorce consultation." A pause. "I'm sorry to hear that, Asher. How soon?" "This morning, if possible. And Chloe, I'm going to need a forensic accountant." "That serious?" "Let's just say I have reason to believe my wife has been more creative with our finances than I realized." "I'll make some calls. Can you be here at 10? I could. Chloe's office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. She decorated it with the kind of modern furniture that looked uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. Her law degree hung next to a photo of her graduating from the police academy. She'd done 5 years as a detective before going to law school. "Talk to me," she said, settling behind her desk with a legal pad. I handed her a flash drive containing the screenshots from Dalia's phone. 8 months of evidence. Text messages, photos, financial discussions. I need to know where I stand legally. She plugged in the drive and spent 10 minutes scrolling through the files. Her expression never changed, but I saw her jaw tighten when she reached the photos. "This is comprehensive," she said finally. "Washington is a no-fault state, so the adultery itself won't impact the divorce settlement. But if she's been using marital assets to support the affair, that's where the forensic accountant comes in." "Exactly. I've got someone who can trace every transaction from your joint accounts. If she's been funding her boyfriend's lifestyle with your money, we can claw it back." I leaned forward. "There's something else. Last month, Dalia said she was loaning $40,000 to her sister. Emergency surgery, no insurance, family crisis." "But you don't think the money went to her sister?" "I think it went to Zane. He's been trying to open a restaurant for 2 years. Always talking about being just one investor away from making it happen." Chloe made notes. "We'll trace every penny. What about your assets? House, retirement accounts, the gym?" "The gym is mine, established before the marriage. The house," I shrugged. "Let her have it. I never liked that neighborhood anyway." "Don't be hasty. A house is a substantial asset. It's also where she's been entertaining her boyfriend while I was out of town. I'd rather burn it down than live there after this." Chloe looked up from her notes. "Asher, I have to ask, what's your end game here? Quick and quiet? Or do you want to make a statement?" I thought about Dalia's face this morning. The practiced lies, the casual deception, the kiss on the cheek while she planned her exit strategy. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. Meaning? Meaning I spent 12 years catching people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I'm very good at making sure the truth comes to light. Chloe set down her pen. Stay within legal boundaries, Asher. I can protect you from a lot of things, but not from criminal charges. I'm not planning to break any laws. I'm just planning to be very thorough about documenting the truth. She studied my face for a long moment. All right. I'll have the forensic accountant start immediately. We should have preliminary results by tomorrow afternoon. Good. There's one more thing I need. What's that? I need you to file a motion to freeze our joint accounts, effective immediately. That's aggressive. It'll tip your hand. Not if the timing is right. I left Chloe's office with a clear plan and a lighter feeling in my chest. For 8 months, I'd been living a lie without knowing it. For the first time since finding that phone, I felt like I was back in control. The gym was busy when I arrived. Tuesday afternoons always brought the lunch crowd, office workers trying to squeeze in a workout, retirees with time to spare, college students between classes. The sound of gloves hitting heavy bags filled the air, mixed with the rhythmic squeak of speed bags and the occasional grunt of exertion. You look like someone who's got something on his mind, said Victor Reyes, my head trainer, and the closest thing I had to a business partner. Vic was 62, built like a fire hydrant, and had been boxing since he was 12. He'd trained 3 Golden Gloves champions and could still make fighters half his age look foolish in the ring. More importantly, he could read people like a book. Just working through some personal stuff, I said. The kind of personal stuff that requires a lawyer? I looked at him sharply. How did you had that look when you came in. Same look you used to get during those fraud cases. Like you were putting together a puzzle and didn't like the picture. Vic had been around during my transition from corporate investigation to gym ownership. He'd seen me work through enough cases to recognize the signs. My marriage is over, I said simply. I'm sorry to hear that. Dalia seemed like a nice woman. Seemed being the operative phrase. Vic nodded slowly. You need anything from me? Just keep the gym running. I might be distracted for a while. Take all the time you need. But Asher? He fixed me with a steady look. Don't do anything that'll make you into someone you don't want to be. I appreciated the concern, but Vic didn't understand. I wasn't planning to become someone different. I was planning to become exactly who I'd always been. Someone who didn't let lies go unpunished. That evening, I sat in my home office and opened a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. While Dalia was at her fake client dinner, I reviewed everything I'd learned. The forensic accountant had worked fast. Preliminary results confirmed my suspicions. The $40,000 had gone to Zane, not Dalia's sister. 3 other smaller transfers over the past 6 months totaled another $15,000. My wife had been funding her boyfriend's restaurant dreams with our joint savings, but the money was just the beginning. I'd also discovered that Dalia had been using our shared credit card to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts. She'd been building a new life with Zane while I paid for it. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Dinner running late. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long moment, then opened the burner email account containing the screenshots from her phone. Zane had texted her 20 minutes ago. Can't wait to see you. I've missed you all day. So much for the client dinner. I opened a new message on Dalia's phone thread and typed, I miss what we had too. Come over tonight. My husband is away on business. Then I deleted the message from her sent folder, booked a flight to Chicago for the following morning, and sent Dalia a text from my own phone. Emergency client meeting in Chicago. Flying out first thing tomorrow. Will be gone 3 days. Her response came back immediately. Safe travels. Love you. The lies came so easily to her, but then she'd had 8 months of practice. I spent the rest of the evening setting up a small camera in the foyer and placing an audio recorder in the living room credenza. Nothing illegal, just insurance in case I needed to document what happened next. At 11:30 p.m., I heard Dalia's car in the driveway. She came in quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. I listened to her moving around downstairs, then heard her footsteps on the stairs. "How was dinner?" I called from the bedroom. "Productive. I think we landed the account." She appeared in the doorway, already undressing. "You packed for Chicago?" "All set. Early flight." She slipped into bed beside me, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. In less than 24 hours, her carefully constructed double life was going to collapse. She had no idea what was coming. But then I remembered the photos on her phone, and the sympathy evaporated. "Good night," she whispered, kissing my shoulder. "Good night, Dalia." It was the last time she would lie to me. I left the house at 6 a.m., driving to the airport just in case Dalia was watching. But instead of catching a flight to Chicago, I parked in long-term parking and took a taxi to a hotel near the gym. If anyone checked, my car would be exactly where it should be for a business trip. From my hotel room, I sent Dalia a text. "Landed safely, meetings all day, talk tonight." Her response, "Miss you already." The casual cruelty of it amazed me. While I was supposedly in Chicago, she was planning to bring her boyfriend to our house. The same house where we'd hosted dinner parties, celebrated anniversaries, and built what I'd thought was a life together. At 2 p.m., I used Dalia's phone to send Zane a message. "Change of plans. He left for Chicago this morning. Come over tonight around 9. I'll cook." Zane's response was immediate. "Can't wait. I've been thinking about this all week." I spent the afternoon preparing. The camera in the foyer was positioned perfectly to capture the front door. The audio recorder would pick up any conversation in the living room. I'd printed copies of the divorce papers Chloe had prepared, along with a comprehensive breakdown of Dalia's financial betrayal. At 8:30, I positioned myself in the kitchen with a clear view of the driveway. My heart was beating faster than usual, but my hands were steady. This was just another investigation reaching its conclusion. Zane arrived at 9:47 p.m. in a silver BMW that probably cost more than most people made in a year. He'd dressed for the occasion, expensive jeans, designer shirt, cologne that I could smell from 30 feet away. He carried a bottle of wine and what looked like flowers. I let him ring the doorbell twice before answering. The look on his face when I opened the door was everything I'd hoped for. Confusion, then recognition, then the slow dawning of absolute panic. "Hello, Zane." I held up the manila envelope containing the divorce papers. "Dalia's upstairs packing. You can help her carry boxes." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried to look past me into the house. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I know about the affair. I know about the money. I know about everything." I stepped aside and gestured for him to come in. "Please, we should discuss this like adults." Zane hesitated, probably calculating whether he could make it back to his car before I caught him. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, won out. He stepped inside, still clutching his wine and flowers like they might protect him. "Where is she?" he asked. "Upstairs, having a breakdown, I imagine. She should be down in a minute." I led him into the living room, where I'd arranged 3 chairs in a triangle. The recorder in the credenza was already running. "Look, Asher, I want you to know that we never meant for this to happen." 8 months. I sat down and opened the envelope. "That's how long you've been sleeping with my wife. 8 months of planning, lying, and stealing. That doesn't sound like something that just happened." Zane's face went pale. "How did you—" "I'm very good at finding things people want to keep hidden. It's what I used to do for a living." I pulled out the financial records and spread them on the coffee table. $55,000. That's how much of my money you've spent on your restaurant venture. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That was a loan. From my wife, using funds from our joint account, without my knowledge or consent." I looked up at him. "In most states, that's called theft." Footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. Dalia appeared in the doorway wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. She took in the scene, me in one chair, Zane in another, divorce papers scattered on the table, and I watched her face go through the same progression of emotions I'd seen on Zane's. "Hello, sweetheart," I said. "We were just discussing your boyfriend's financial situation." She looked at Zane, then back at me. "Asher, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You've gotten very good at explaining things over the past 8 months. Client dinners, girls' nights, emergency family loans." I stood up and handed her the divorce papers. "But I'm not interested in explanations anymore." Dalia's hands shook as she took the papers. "You went through my phone. You left it unlocked in the bathroom. I was fixing the lock and saw the messages." I shrugged. After 12 years of marriage, I thought I deserved to know why my wife was texting her ex-boyfriend at 2 a.m. Zane cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go—" "No." My voice was sharp enough to stop him halfway out of his chair. "You're part of this conversation. You've been spending my money, sleeping in my bed, and planning to steal my wife. The least you can do is sit through the consequences." Dalia sank into the third chair. "How long have you known?" "Since last night. I've spent today documenting everything. The affair, the financial theft, the lies." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. "I have copies of every message, every photo, every transaction. My lawyer has copies. My accountant has copies." "You can't use those in court," Zane said. "You obtained them illegally." I smiled at him. "Actually, I can't use the phone records in court. But I can use the bank records, the credit card statements, and the documented timeline of lies. I can also use whatever you two say tonight, since this conversation is being recorded." Both of them looked around the room as if they could spot the recorder. "You're recording us?" Dalia's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm documenting a conversation about the dissolution of my marriage and the recovery of stolen assets. Perfectly legal in Washington state." I sat back down. "Now, let's talk about how this is going to work." I pulled out a second set of papers. "Zane, this is a demand for immediate repayment of the $55,000 you've received from my wife. You have 30 days to return the money, or I'll file civil charges for theft and fraud." Zane's face had gone from pale to gray. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll need to get creative. Sell your car, liquidate your restaurant investment, ask your parents for a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to pay back every penny." "And if I don't?" "Then you'll learn what it feels like to have your financial life destroyed by someone who knows how to work the system." I turned to Dalia. "As for you, I've already filed to freeze our joint accounts. As of tomorrow morning, you won't have access to any marital assets until the divorce is finalized." "You can't do that." "I can, and I did. You've proven you can't be trusted with money that isn't entirely yours." I handed her another document. "I'm also removing you as the beneficiary on my life insurance, my retirement accounts, and my will." Dalia's composure finally cracked. "Asher, please, we can work through this. People make mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. 8 months of adultery and financial theft isn't a mistake. It's a choice, a series of choices." Zane stood up abruptly. "I think we should continue this conversation through lawyers." "Sit down." The command came out with enough authority that he actually obeyed. "We're not finished." I pulled out the final document, a timeline I'd prepared showing every business trip I'd taken in the past 8 months, cross-referenced with Dalia and Zane's message history. February 12th through 15th, I was in Seattle investigating the Henderson case. You two spent Valentine's Day together at the Fairmont Hotel. Room service for 2, champagne, the works, all charged to our joint credit card. Dalia closed her eyes. March 8th through 11th. I was in Denver tracking down pension fraud. You told me you were visiting your sister in Portland. Instead, you and Zane took a long weekend in wine country. Again, charged to our card. I continued down the list, watching their faces as I recited the details of their betrayal. Every lie, every cover story, every moment they'd thought they were being clever. "The thing that amazes me," I said finally, "is how careless you were. Text messages on an unlocked phone, credit card records in your real name, hotel reservations using our shared account. Did you think I was stupid, or did you just not care if I found out?" Dalia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did hurt me. You've been hurting me for 8 months every time you looked me in the eye and lied, every time you kissed me goodbye and went to see him, every time you spent our money on your affair." Zane tried again. "Look, we're all adults here. These things happen. We can figure out a way to handle this that doesn't destroy everyone's life." I looked at him with genuine curiosity. "What exactly did you think was going to happen? Did you imagine Dalia would just ask for a divorce, and I'd wish you both well and send you a wedding gift?" We hoped you'd be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I'm not pressing criminal charges for the theft. I'm not releasing the evidence to your families or employers. I'm not posting your messages and photos on social media." I leaned forward. "But I am making sure there are consequences, real consequences." Dalia looked up from her tears. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to understand that your actions matter, that you can't just take whatever you want and expect other people to pay the price." I stood up and walked to the window. "I want you to feel a fraction of what I felt when I realized my marriage was a lie." "We'll pay back the money," Zane said quickly. "All of it, with interest." "Yes, you will, and Dalia will sign the divorce papers without contesting anything. And you'll both stay out of my life permanently." "And if we do all that?" Dalia asked. "Then this ends here. Clean break, no further retaliation. You can start your new life together without me as an obstacle." I turned back to face them. "But if you fight me on this, if you try to claim the money was a gift, if you contest the divorce or make any attempt to take assets you're not entitled to, then I'll make your lives very difficult. I have resources, connections, and a very thorough understanding of how to make problems for people who cross me." The room went quiet except for the sound of Dalia's sniffling. "I need an answer tonight," I said. "Agree to my terms and we can all move forward. Refuse, and this gets much more complicated for both of you." Zane and Dalia looked at each other, having some kind of silent conversation. Finally, Zane nodded. "We agree," Dalia said quietly. "Good." I handed her a pen. "Sign the papers." She signed without reading them, her hand shaking so badly she could barely write her name. "Zane, I'll expect the first payment within 2 weeks, the full amount within 30 days. "I understand." "Then I think we're finished here." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Dalia, you can pack whatever you need tonight. I'll have the rest of your things sent wherever you're staying." Zane practically ran to his car. Dalia lingered in the doorway, looking back at the house we'd shared for 10 years. "I really didn't want it to end this way," she said. "Then you shouldn't have started it in the first place." She nodded and walked to Zane's car. I watched them drive away, then went back inside and turned off the recording equipment. The house felt different now, quieter, cleaner somehow. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in my chair, looking at the signed divorce papers. In less than 2 hours, I'd dismantled a marriage, recovered stolen assets, and eliminated 2 people from my life who had proven they couldn't be trusted. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like the quiet end of something that had been fading for months without me even noticing. But it was a clean end. No loose threads, no unfinished business, no lingering questions about what might have been. Tomorrow, I'd file the papers and start the legal process. I'd change the locks and have Dalia's things packed. I'd call my insurance company and my bank and remove her from everything we'd once shared. And then I'd figure out what came next. 3 weeks later, I was learning that revenge was more complicated than I'd expected. The divorce papers had been filed. The joint accounts remained frozen. Zane had made his first payment, $10,000, which his lawyer delivered with a request for a payment plan for the remaining balance. I'd agreed, partly because I was feeling generous, and partly because monthly reminders of his mistake seemed more satisfying than a lump sum. But Dalia wasn't disappearing quietly into her new life the way I'd anticipated. "She's been calling everyone we know," Chloe informed me during our weekly check-in. "Mutual friends, your neighbors, people from the gym. She's telling them you've been financially abusive and that she only had the affair because you were controlling and distant." I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. "She's rewriting history. It's a common tactic. Control the narrative before the other side can establish the facts." Chloe pulled out a legal pad covered with notes. "The good news is that most people who know you aren't buying it. The bad news is that she's gotten some of your mutual friends to take sides." "Such as?" "The Hendersons, for starters. Apparently, Dalia told Janet that you've been monitoring her phone and email for months. She made it sound like you were paranoid and possessive." I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "I monitored her phone for exactly one night, after finding evidence of an 8-month affair. I know that, you know that, but Janet Henderson doesn't know that, and she's been spreading Dalia's version to anyone who'll listen." This was the part of divorce I hadn't anticipated: the social warfare, the way mutual friends would be forced to choose sides based on incomplete information and competing narratives. "There's something else," Chloe continued. "Dalia's hired a new attorney, someone with a reputation for aggressive tactics in high-asset divorces." "We don't have high assets. You have the gym, the house, and retirement accounts. In today's market, that's enough to fight over." She leaned forward. "Her new lawyer is claiming the money she gave Zane was a personal loan from her individual inheritance, not marital assets." "What inheritance?" "Apparently, her grandmother left her some money 5 years ago. Not much, but enough to potentially cover the $40,000 she gave Zane." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Can she prove that? "She's trying to. The problem is that money has been sitting in your joint account for 5 years, mixed with marital income. It's going to be very difficult to trace back to its original source." "So she might get away with it." "She might get away with some of it. But Asher, there's something else you need to know." Chloe's expression grew serious. "She's also claiming you threatened her and Zane during your confrontation. She says you told them you'd make their lives difficult if they didn't comply with your demands." "I did say that. That was a mistake. It could be construed as extortion." I stared at her. "I was protecting my assets from further theft." "I understand that. But her lawyer is going to argue that you used threats and intimidation to coerce her into signing the divorce papers. They might try to have the agreement thrown out." "Based on what?" "I have recordings of the entire conversation. She agreed to everything voluntarily. Recordings you made without their knowledge. Which is legal in Washington. For evidence of a crime, yes. But using recordings to pressure someone into a legal agreement? That's a gray area." I stood up and walked to Chloe's window, looking out at the city below. 3 weeks ago, I'd felt like I was in control of the situation. Now, it seemed like Dalia was managing to turn my own thoroughness against me. "What do you recommend?" "We fight back, but we do it smart." Chloe joined me at the window. "The key is to focus on the facts that are indisputable. The affair happened. We have evidence. Money was transferred from joint accounts to her boyfriend. We have records. She lied repeatedly about her whereabouts. We have a timeline. And the inheritance claim? We demand documentation. Bank records, probate documents, anything that proves when the money was received and how it was handled. If she can't produce clear evidence that the money she gave Zane came from her grandmother's inheritance, then it's marital property and she had no right to give it away." I nodded. "What about the social campaign she's running?" That's trickier. We can't control what people choose to believe, but we can make sure the truth is available to anyone who wants to know it. Meaning? Meaning we document everything and make sure it's accessible. If someone asks you directly about the divorce, you tell them the truth. You don't volunteer information, but you don't hide from it either. I left Chloe's office feeling like I was fighting a war on multiple fronts. It wasn't enough to prove that Dalia had cheated and stolen money. Now I had to defend myself against accusations of abuse and extortion while watching her rewrite our entire relationship for public consumption. The gym provided some refuge. Physical work had always helped me think clearly, and there was something therapeutic about hitting a heavy bag until my hands ached. "You're going to hurt yourself if you keep that up," Vic observed, watching me pummel the bag with more force than technique. "Maybe that's the point. Or maybe you need to find a better way to work through whatever's eating at you." I stopped hitting the bag and leaned against it, breathing hard. "She's trying to make me the villain." "Your ex?" "She's telling people I was controlling and abusive, that the affair was my fault because I was distant and paranoid." I pulled off my gloves and flexed my sore hands. "She's got mutual friends believing that I'm the problem." Vic handed me a towel. "What do the people who really know you think?" "Most of them see through it, but some—" I shrugged. "Some people want to believe the most dramatic version of events. So let them. The people whose opinions matter will figure out the truth eventually." "What if they don't? Then they weren't really your friends to begin with." Vic sat down on a nearby bench. "You know what I learned in 30 years of boxing? You can't control what the crowd thinks. You can only control what you do in the ring. This isn't a boxing match, Vic. Isn't it? You've got an opponent who's trying to hurt you. You've got people watching and taking sides. You've got to decide whether you're going to fight clean or fight dirty." He looked at me steadily. "The question is, what kind of fighter do you want to be?" That evening, I sat in my empty house and made a list of everyone Dalia had contacted. The list was longer than I'd expected. She'd been thorough in her campaign to control the narrative. Some of the names didn't surprise me. Janet Henderson had always been a gossip who loved drama. The Millers next door had never particularly liked me anyway. But others stung. People I'd considered genuine friends, who apparently were willing to believe the worst about me, based on Dalia's version of events. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Asher? It's Tom Bradley." Tom was a friend from my corporate investigation days. We'd worked several cases together before I'd opened the gym. "Tom, good to hear from you. I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry, man." "Thanks. These things happen. Listen, I got a call today from someone asking about you. Said they were doing background research for a potential business partnership." I sat up straighter. "What kind of questions?" "Mostly about your character. Whether you had a temper, whether you'd ever been accused of harassment or intimidation. Professional stuff, but personal too." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you're one of the most ethical people I've ever worked with. That I'd trust you with my life." Tom paused. "But Asher, I think you should know. This wasn't a business inquiry. This was someone fishing for dirt." "Did they give you a name?" "Said they represented a law firm, but they wouldn't say which one." The whole thing felt off. After Tom hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Dalia's new lawyer wasn't just defending her in the divorce. They were actively investigating me, looking for anything they could use to support her claims of abuse and intimidation. I called Chloe. "They're doing opposition research on me," I said without preamble. "That's not unusual in contested divorces. What did they find?" "Nothing, as far as I know. But the fact that they're looking means they're planning to make this ugly." "Then we make sure we're ready for ugly." Chloe's voice was calm and professional. "I'll have our investigator do a background check on Dalia and her new boyfriend. If they want to play hardball, we'll show them what hardball looks like." I thought this was supposed to be over. It will be. But not until we've established clearly and definitively what the truth is. After hanging up with Chloe, I walked through my house, looking at the empty spaces where Dalia's things used to be, the bare spots on the walls where her pictures had hung, the empty shelves where her books had been. 3 weeks ago, I'd thought I was ending a marriage cleanly and efficiently. Instead, I'd started a war that was spreading into every corner of my life. But if Dalia wanted a war, I'd give her one. I'd spent 12 years investigating people who thought they were smarter than the system. I'd learned how to find the truth even when it was buried under layers of lies and misdirection. And I'd learned that the truth, properly presented, was the most devastating weapon of all. The next morning, I started my own investigation. I began with Dalia's social media accounts, which she'd made public in recent weeks, probably part of her campaign to seem like the wronged party, the abandoned wife trying to rebuild her life. But social media told stories that people didn't always intend to tell. The timeline was revealing. Photos of Dalia and Zane at restaurants and events, posted innocuously but time-stamped in ways that contradicted her claims about when the relationship had started. A picture from a wine tasting in January, 2 months before she'd told me about her first accidental encounter with Zane. Comments from mutual friends that revealed more than they'd probably intended. References to Dalia being so much happier lately and glowing with new love, all dated from before she'd supposedly reconnected with Zane. I screenshot everything and organized it chronologically. The evidence painted a clear picture of a relationship that had been going on much longer than either of them had admitted. But the real revelation came when I started looking into Zane's background more carefully. His restaurant venture wasn't his first failed business. In the past 5 years, he'd started and abandoned 3 different companies, leaving behind a trail of unpaid debts and angry investors. His credit was apparently so bad that he couldn't get traditional business loans, which explained why he'd needed Dalia's financial support. More interesting was his relationship history. I found records of 2 previous relationships that had ended in restraining orders. Both women had accused him of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. I forwarded everything to Chloe with a note. "Thought you should see this." Her response came back within an hour. "This changes everything. We need to meet." That afternoon, Chloe spread the new evidence across her conference table like a general planning a campaign. "Your wife didn't just have an affair," she said. "She got involved with a con man who's been using her to fund his lifestyle while he looks for his next mark. You think he targeted her deliberately? I think he saw a successful woman in an unhappy marriage and recognized an opportunity. The question is whether she was a willing participant or another victim." I studied the photos of Dalia and Zane together. The way she looked at him, the expensive gifts she'd bought him, the way she'd risked her marriage and her financial security for their relationship. "She was willing," I said finally. "Maybe he initiated it, but she made her own choices. Either way, this gives us leverage. If her lawyer tries to paint Zane as an innocent victim of your aggression, we can show that he's actually a serial manipulator with a history of financial abuse. And if they try to claim the money was a legitimate loan, we point out that she was lending money to someone with a documented history of not paying back debts. That's not a reasonable use of marital assets." I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: optimism. "There's one more thing," Chloe continued. "I think we should consider going public with some of this information." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if Dalia wants to fight this battle in the court of public opinion, we should make sure the public has access to all the facts." "You're talking about releasing the evidence of the affair?" "I'm talking about making sure that when people ask questions, they get complete answers. Right now, they're only hearing her side of the story." I thought about Tom's call, about the investigation into my background, about Janet Henderson spreading gossip based on Dalia's lies. What would that look like? Carefully managed truth-telling. We don't dump everything at once, but we make sure that accurate information is available to counter her narrative. "And if she escalates in response?" Chloe smiled grimly. "Then we escalate back, but with better ammunition." I left Chloe's office feeling like I'd regained some measure of control. For weeks, I'd been playing defense while Dalia rewrote our history. Now I had the tools to fight back. But as I drove home through the familiar streets of our neighborhood, I wondered if this was really what I wanted. A public battle where our private failures became entertainment for people who had never particularly cared about either of us. Then I remembered the look on Dalia's face when she'd signed the divorce papers. The tears that had seemed genuine at the time, but now felt calculated. The way she'd agreed to my terms and then immediately started working to undermine them. She'd made this choice when she'd decided to turn our divorce into a public relations campaign. Now she was going to learn that two could play that game. And I was very good at games that required strategy, patience, and attention to detail. The first shot across the bow came from an unexpected source, my daughter Emma. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce papers were filed. At 22, she was finishing her senior year at the University of Washington and had apparently chosen to stay out of the family drama. I'd respected that choice, even though her silence hurt more than I wanted to admit. So when she called on a Thursday evening, I was hopeful that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. "Dad, we need to talk." "Of course. Do you want to come by the house, or should I meet you somewhere?" "Actually, I'm already here. I'm in the driveway." I looked out the window and saw her car parked behind mine. Emma sat in the driver's seat, talking on her phone, making no move to come inside. "I'll come out," I said. She rolled down her window as I approached, but didn't get out of the car. Her expression was cold in a way I'd never seen before. "Mom told me what really happened," she said without preamble. "What did she tell you?" "About how you've been controlling and paranoid for years. About how you went through her private messages and threatened her and Zane. About how you're trying to destroy her financially out of spite." I leaned against her car, choosing my words carefully. "Did she tell you about the affair?" "She told me you two grew apart, and that she found comfort with an old friend. She said you've blown it out of proportion to make yourself look like the victim." "Emma, your mother was having an affair for 8 months. She was using our joint accounts to fund her boyfriend's business ventures. I have documentation." "I don't want to see your documentation." Her voice was sharp. "I don't want to hear about Mom's private life or your marriage problems. I just want you to stop trying to ruin her." "I'm not trying to ruin anyone. I'm trying to protect myself legally and financially." "By freezing her bank accounts? By making her beg for money to pay rent?" I stared at her. "She has access to her individual accounts. The only accounts that are frozen are the joint ones, and that's temporary until the divorce is finalized." "She had to borrow money from friends to make her car payment last week." "Then she should get a job." Emma's eyes flashed. "She has a job. Had a job. Until you got her fired." "I didn't get her fired." "You sent evidence of her personal life to her employer. How is that not getting her fired?" I took a deep breath. This conversation was going exactly where I'd feared it would go. "Emma, I think your mother has given you a version of events that isn't entirely accurate. And I think you've become someone I don't recognize." She started her car. "I'm disappointed in you, Dad. I thought you were better than this." She drove away before I could respond, leaving me standing in my driveway feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Inside the house, I poured myself a drink and tried to process what had just happened. Dalia had gotten to Emma first, and she'd done it strategically. My daughter now saw me as the villain in a story where her mother was the innocent victim. I called Chloe. "She's using your daughter as a weapon," Chloe said after I'd recounted the conversation. "It's manipulative, but it's not illegal." "So what do I do?" "You document this conversation like you document everything else, and you resist the urge to fight back through Emma. Don't put your daughter in the middle of this more than she already is. What if she goes public with her support for Dalia? Then we deal with it. But Asher, you need to understand that this is going to get worse before it gets better. Dalia is fighting for her survival now. She's going to use every weapon she has." That weekend, I found out exactly what Chloe meant. I was at the gym on Saturday morning when Vic pulled me aside. "You need to see this," he said, handing me his phone. On the screen was a Facebook post from Emma, shared publicly for all her friends and followers to see. "Sometimes, the people you love most are the ones who disappoint you the deepest. Watching my father systematically destroy my mother's life has been one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. Divorce is painful enough without one person trying to inflict maximum damage on the other. I'm heartbroken that my dad has chosen revenge over healing, cruelty over compassion. My mom is one of the strongest, kindest people I know, and she doesn't deserve what's being done to her." The post had been shared dozens of times and had hundreds of comments, most of them expressing sympathy for Emma and outrage at me. "It gets worse," Vic said, scrolling down. "Look at the comments." Friends of Emma's were sharing their own stories about vindictive fathers and abusive men. People I'd never met were calling me a monster based entirely on my daughter's post. Someone had even shared my gym's address, suggesting that people should avoid giving business to someone who would financially abuse his own wife. "How many people have seen this?" I asked. "It's been shared over 100 times in the past few hours, and Emma has a lot of followers. She's been active in student government, social causes, that kind of thing." I handed back the phone and sat down heavily on a nearby bench. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from being a private citizen going through a difficult divorce to being a public villain in a social media drama. "What are you going to do?" Vic asked. I don't know. But I did know. I was going to fight back. That afternoon, I called an emergency meeting with Chloe and her investigator, a former police detective named Marcus Webb. "The gloves are off," I said, showing them Emma's post and the response it had generated. "Dalia is using my own daughter to destroy my reputation. I want to know everything there is to know about her and Zane." Marcus nodded. "I've already started digging deeper into both of them. What I've found so far is interesting." He spread a series of documents across the table. "Zane's financial situation is worse than we initially thought. He owes back taxes, has defaulted on multiple loans, and is facing eviction from his apartment. The restaurant he's been planning doesn't exist. He's been using that story to con money from various people for over a year. Various people. At least 3 other women that I can identify. All of them successful, all of them in relationships that were struggling. He has a pattern of targeting women who are emotionally vulnerable and financially stable." I studied the documents. "What about Dalia? How much does she know about his situation?" "That's where it gets interesting." Marcus pulled out another file. "She's been helping him with more than just money. She's been using her marketing connections to try to find investors for his fake restaurant. She's co-signed loan applications. She's even listed herself as a business partner on some documents. So she's not just a victim. She's either a willing accomplice or she's been completely manipulated. But given her professional background and intelligence, I lean toward accomplice." Chloe leaned forward. "This changes our strategy completely. If she's been actively participating in his schemes, she could be legally liable for fraud." "What kind of fraud?" "Soliciting investments for a business that doesn't exist. Using false information on loan applications. Potentially tax evasion if they haven't reported the money she's been giving him." I felt a familiar surge of satisfaction, the same feeling I used to get when a complex investigation finally started coming together. "What do we do with this information?" "We use it carefully," Chloe said. "First, we present it to her lawyer as leverage in the divorce negotiations. If she wants to avoid criminal charges, she needs to stop the public campaign against you and agree to a fair settlement." "And if she refuses?" "Then we turn the evidence over to the appropriate authorities and let them decide whether to prosecute." Marcus gathered up his files. "There's one more thing you should know. I've been monitoring Dalia's communications, legally, through public sources, and with cooperation from some of Zane's previous victims. She's planning something for next week." "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure yet. but she's been reaching out to local media, claiming she has a story about domestic financial abuse. I think she's planning to go public in a bigger way. I stared at him. She's going to the press. It looks that way. Local news, maybe some of the smaller newspapers. She's positioning herself as a victim of financial abuse who's speaking out to help other women. Based on what evidence? Based on her word and Emma's support. In the current climate, that might be enough to get her story told. I left the meeting feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Dalia wasn't just fighting the divorce anymore. She was trying to destroy my reputation permanently. If she succeeded in getting her story into the media, the damage could be irreversible. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd escalated the conflict beyond what I could ignore or handle quietly. That evening, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a month earlier. I was going to tell my side of the story first. I started with a detailed timeline of events, documented with screenshots, bank records, and legal filings. I wrote it as a factual account, without editorial commentary or emotional appeals, just the facts, presented chronologically and supported by evidence. Then I created a private website and uploaded everything. The affair evidence, the financial records, the documentation of lies and manipulation. I included a brief introduction explaining that I was sharing this information to counter false narratives being spread about me. I didn't make the site public immediately. Instead, I sent the link to a select group of people, close friends who had been hearing Dalia's version of events, colleagues from my investigation days, and a few key members of our social circle who I knew would share the information if they felt it was credible. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tom Bradley called within an hour. Holy hell, Asher. I had no idea it was this extensive. Janet Henderson, who had been one of Dalia's most vocal supporters, sent a text. I owe you an apology. I believed her story without asking for your side. By Sunday evening, the link had been shared with dozens of people in our social circle. The narrative was shifting, and Dalia apparently knew it. She called me at 11 p.m., the first time we'd spoken since the night I'd confronted her and Zane. You bastard, she said without preamble. You've ruined everything. I've told the truth. There's a difference. You've humiliated me publicly. Emma is devastated. My family is asking questions I can't answer. Then maybe you should start answering them honestly. I want that website taken down immediately. That's not going to happen. I'll sue you for invasion of privacy. With what evidence? Everything on that site came from public records or communications you sent voluntarily. I kept my voice calm and professional. Besides, I thought you wanted the truth to come out. Isn't that why you've been talking to reporters? A long pause. What do you want? I want you to stop lying about me. I want you to tell Emma the truth about what happened, and I want you to agree to the original divorce terms without any further legal challenges. And if I do that, you'll take down the website? I'll consider it. That's not good enough. It's the best offer you're going to get. Because, Dalia, I know about the investment fraud. I know about the fake restaurant and the other women Zane has been conning. I know about your involvement in his schemes. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And if you continue this public campaign against me, I'll make sure the authorities know about it too. You're threatening me. I'm informing you of the consequences of your choices, just like I did the night I found out about the affair. She hung up without another word. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Emma. We need to talk. I saw your website. This time, when she came to the house, she got out of her car. We sat in the kitchen where I'd made her breakfast countless times during her childhood. She looked older than her 22 years and tired in a way that made my heart ache. Is it all true? She asked quietly. Every word. I have additional documentation if you want to see it. The affair started before their wedding? According to the message history, yes. Emma stared at her hands. She told me you'd grown apart, that you were working too much and didn't pay attention to her anymore. That might be true too, but it doesn't justify 8 months of lies and theft. She said the money was from her inheritance. There's no record of any inheritance. The money came from our joint accounts. Emma was quiet for a long time. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I posted that thing on Facebook without knowing the whole story. I know. People are going to think I'm an idiot. People are going to think you're a daughter who believed her mother. There's nothing wrong with that. What should I do? I reached across the table and took her hand. You should take down the post and tell the truth. Not for me, but because the truth matters. Will you take down your website? Eventually, when this is all over and your mother stops trying to destroy my reputation. Emma nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have talked to you before I posted anything. We both made mistakes. The important thing is that we're talking now. That afternoon, Emma posted a new message on Facebook. I recently shared a post about my parents' divorce that was based on incomplete information. I've since learned that the situation is more complex than I initially understood. I'm taking down my previous post and asking people to respect my family's privacy during this difficult time. I love both my parents, and I hope they can resolve their differences peacefully. It wasn't a complete vindication, but it was enough to stop the social media pile-on. More importantly, I had my daughter back. That evening, Chloe called with news. Dalia's lawyer wants to meet. They're ready to negotiate. Based on the original terms? Based on terms very close to the original agreement. I think your website convinced them that fighting you publicly isn't a winning strategy. And the criminal charges? We'll hold that in reserve. If she honors the divorce agreement and stops the public campaign, we don't pursue it. If she violates the terms or tries to restart the media offensive, we turn everything over to the district attorney. I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. Set up the meeting. There's one more thing. Zane's other victims are planning to file a class action lawsuit against him. They want to know if you'll join. I thought about it for a moment. No. I got my money back, and I'm getting my life back. That's enough for me. Are you sure? You could probably recover additional damages. I'm sure. I just want this to be over. And for the first time since I'd found that unlocked phone in my bathroom, I actually believed it might be. The mediation took place in a sterile conference room downtown, the kind of place where marriages go to die in the most civilized way possible. Dalia sat across from me at a polished table, flanked by her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. It was the first time I'd seen my soon-to-be ex-wife since the night I'd caught her with Zane. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident executive who'd once commanded boardroom meetings had been replaced by someone who couldn't quite meet my eyes. Let's keep this simple, her attorney began. My client is prepared to accept the terms outlined in your initial filing, with some minor modifications. Chloe spread the documents across the table. What modifications? The payment schedule for the funds transferred to Mr. Merrinor. We'd like to extend it from 30 days to 6 months. I looked at Dalia. Is he having trouble coming up with the money? She spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. Zane's restaurant plans fell through. He's having some financial difficulties. What kind of difficulties? Her attorney intervened. That's not relevant to these proceedings. It's relevant if he's planning to default on his debt to my client, Chloe said smoothly. I leaned back in my chair. Let me guess. The other investors found out about his history and pulled their funding. Dalia's silence was confirmation enough. 6 months is fine, I said, but I want a personal guarantee from Dalia. If Zane defaults, she's responsible for the full amount. That's not, her attorney started. That's fair, Dalia interrupted quietly. I'll guarantee it. Her attorney looked like she wanted to argue, but Dalia shook her head. What about the house? Chloe asked. She can have it, I said. I'll sign over my half in exchange for her agreeing to refinance and remove my name from the mortgage within 90 days. And if she can't qualify for refinancing, then we sell it and split the proceeds. Dalia nodded. I can refinance. The rest of the negotiation was surprisingly straightforward. Retirement accounts split down the middle, personal property divided according to a list we'd prepared. No alimony, no ongoing financial obligations. There's one more item, Chloe said. The website. Dalia's attorney pulled out a prepared statement. My client wants assurance that the website containing private information about her will be taken down immediately. The website stays up until the divorce is finalized and all payments are made, I said. After that, I'll consider removing it. Consider isn't good enough. It's the best you're going to get. The information on that site is all factual and legally obtained. I have every right to keep it public. Dalia spoke up again. What if I make a public statement acknowledging that the affair happened and that I misrepresented some of the facts about our divorce? I studied her face. What kind of statement? A Facebook post. Something simple, acknowledging that I made mistakes and that the breakdown of our marriage wasn't entirely your fault. And you'll tell Emma the complete truth about what happened? I already have. We talked yesterday. Her attorney looked uncomfortable with this direction, but she didn't intervene. All right, I said. Public acknowledgement, complete honesty with Emma, and compliance with all the financial terms. In exchange, I'll take down the website within 30 days of the divorce being finalized. Deal. We shook hands across the table, a bizarre formality that somehow felt necessary. As we were gathering our papers, Dalia's attorney stepped out to make a phone call, leaving us alone for the first time since that night in our living room. I'm sorry, Dalia said quietly. For which part? All of it. The affair, the lies, dragging Emma into it, using our friends against you. She looked down at her hands. I never meant for it to get so complicated. What did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd be angry, but that we'd work it out quietly. I thought... She shrugged. I thought you'd just let me go. Maybe I would have, if you'd been honest from the beginning. I was scared. Scared of your reaction, scared of losing everything, scared of starting over at 40. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What about Zane? Her laugh was bitter. Zane turned out to be everything you probably suspected he was, a charming failure who's very good at making other people pay for his mistakes. Are you still together? No. Turns out his feelings for me were directly proportional to my ability to solve his financial problems. I'm sorry. Are you? I considered the question seriously. I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm not sorry that you learned the truth about him. She nodded. That's fair. Her attorney returned, and we finished the paperwork in professional silence. Outside the building, Chloe and I stood on the sidewalk in the afternoon sunshine. How do you feel? She asked. Relieved, tired, ready for this to be over. It will be. The paperwork should be finalized within 2 weeks. I watched Dalia and her attorney disappear into the parking garage. Do you think she'll honor the agreement? I think she's learned that fighting you is more expensive than she can afford. That evening, I sat in my gym office and wrote an email to Tom Bradley and a few other friends who had supported me through the worst of the drama. Wanted to let you know that Dalia and I reached a settlement today. The divorce should be finalized within a couple of weeks. I appreciate your support and friendship during what's been a difficult time. Looking forward to moving on with my life and focusing on the future. I kept it brief and factual. No drama, no celebration, no bitterness. Just information. The responses were immediate and uniformly positive. People were ready for this story to end as much as I was. 2 days later, Dalia posted her promised statement on Facebook. I want to address some things I said about my divorce that weren't entirely accurate. The end of my marriage was the result of mistakes made by both of us, but primarily by me. I had an affair, and I made poor financial decisions that hurt my family. My ex-husband's response to those actions was appropriate and legal. I let my emotions and embarrassment lead me to say things that weren't fair or true. I apologized to everyone who was affected by my poor judgment, especially my daughter and my ex-husband. It was more than I'd expected and exactly what I'd needed. The post generated dozens of supportive comments, most of them praising her for taking responsibility and wishing both of us well. Emma called that evening. "I saw Mom's post," she said. "What did you think?" "I think it was brave and overdue." A pause. "I also think I owe you another apology. I was really unfair to you. You were protecting your mother, I understand that. Still, I should have gotten both sides of the story before I posted anything. Lesson learned?" "Definitely. Dad? Are you going to be okay?" The question caught me off guard. "I think so. Why?" "I don't know. This whole thing just seems so sad. 15 years of marriage, and it ends with lawyers and websites and public statements." She was right. It was sad, but it was also over. "Sometimes things end badly," I said. "The important thing is what you do next." "What are you going to do next?" I looked around my office at the gym, photos of fighters I'd trained, newspaper clippings about the youth programs we ran, certificates from community organizations that had recognized our work. "I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, running the gym, helping people, building something positive." "And dating?" I laughed. "Eventually, when I'm ready. You deserve to be happy, Dad. So do you, and so does your mother." 3 weeks later, I got a call from Marcus Webb. "Thought you'd want to know. Zane was arrested yesterday." "For what?" "Investment fraud. Turns out he was running the same restaurant scam on multiple people simultaneously. The FBI got involved when one of his victims filed a complaint." "What about Dalia?" "She's cooperating with the investigation. Looks like she really was more of a victim than an accomplice. She's not being charged." I felt a mixture of vindication and sympathy. Vindication because it confirmed that my instincts about Zane had been correct. Sympathy because Dalia had paid a heavy price for her poor judgment. "How long is he looking at?" "Could be 5 to 10 years if he's convicted on all counts." After Marcus hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the strange chain of events that had brought me to this point. If I hadn't decided to fix that bathroom lock at 2 in the morning, I might never have found Dalia's phone. I might have continued living in ignorance while my marriage slowly collapsed around me. Instead, I'd learned the truth, fought for what was right, and emerged with my integrity intact. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen, but it was an ending I could live with. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in October. I signed the papers in Chloe's office, and she filed them electronically with the court. No ceremony, no drama, just a few signatures that officially ended 15 years of marriage. "How does it feel to be a free man?" Chloe asked. "Like the end of a long investigation," I said. "Satisfying, but exhausting." "Any regrets?" I thought about it. I regret that it had to end this way. I regret that Emma got hurt. I regret that I didn't see the problems in my marriage sooner. "But you don't regret how you handled it?" "No. I told the truth, protected my assets, and made sure there were consequences for dishonesty. I'd do it the same way again." That afternoon, I took down the website. The truth had served its purpose, and it was time to let sleeping dogs lie. That evening, I drove to the house I'd shared with Dalia. She'd already moved out, and I wanted to walk through it one more time before the new owners took possession. The rooms felt smaller than I remembered, and emptier than they had any right to be. This was where I'd thought I was building a life, where I'd planned to grow old with someone who turned out to be a stranger. But standing in the empty living room where I'd confronted Dalia and Zane, I didn't feel sad or angry anymore. I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd learned the truth. Grateful that I'd found the strength to fight for myself. Grateful that I'd emerged from the wreckage with my principles intact. I locked the door for the last time and drove back to my apartment above the gym. It wasn't much, a small space with basic furniture and no memories attached to it. But it was honest. And after everything I'd been through, honesty felt like luxury. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through windows that belonged entirely to me. I made coffee in a kitchen where no one had ever lied to me. I checked my phone and found no messages that would complicate my day. For the first time in months, my life was exactly what it appeared to be, and that felt like victory enough. 6 months later, I ran into Janet Henderson at the grocery store. She'd been one of Dalia's most vocal supporters during the worst of the drama, and I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce was finalized. "Asher," she said, looking uncomfortable. "How are you?" "I'm well, thanks. How's your family?" "Good, good." She hesitated. "I heard about Zane's arrest. I'm sorry Dalia got caught up in all that." "She's doing fine, as far as I know." "And you? Are you seeing anyone?" I smiled. "I'm taking things one day at a time." "That's probably wise." Another hesitation. "Asher, I owe you an apology. I said some things during your divorce that weren't fair. I didn't have the whole story." "No apology necessary. You were being a good friend to someone you thought needed support." "Still, I should have known better." I shrugged. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." She nodded gratefully and hurried away with her shopping cart. As I watched her go, I realized that I'd truly forgiven everyone involved in the mess my marriage had become. Dalia, for her betrayal and lies. Emma, for her misguided loyalty. Our friends, for choosing sides based on incomplete information. Even Zane, though he was paying a price that had nothing to do with me. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't about excusing bad behavior or pretending that wrong actions didn't have consequences. It was about refusing to let other people's choices continue to poison your own life. I'd told the truth, protected myself, and ensured that actions had appropriate consequences. But I'd also moved on. And that, I thought, as I finished my shopping and headed home to my honest little apartment, was the most important victory of all. The gym was busy when I returned, filled with the sound of people working to become stronger, faster, better versions of themselves. I hung up my jacket and walked onto the training floor, ready to help them achieve their goals. It was good work, honest work, and it was mine. Just like my life was mine now, complicated by nothing more than the challenges I chose to take on and the problems I was willing to solve. It had taken a long time to get here, but I'd finally arrived at a place where the only lies I had to worry about were the ones people told themselves about their limitations. And those were the kind of lies I enjoyed helping people overcome.